The arena roared like a thunderstorm of metal. A swirling sea of alien species packed the stands, hooting, howling, slamming clawed fists or tentacles or cybernetic limbs against the walls and rails. Heat shimmered off the energy barriers that caged the blood-soaked battlefield, where centuries of warriors had met gruesome, glorious deaths for the amusement of the elite. Giant holographic screens rotated above, displaying the profile of the next contestant. Specimen 47B, Human Primate. Status: Prisoner, unarmed, malnourished. Threat level: Minimal. The crowd laughed. Another threat, someone screamed in Galactic Basic, prompting a wave of jeers and spittle. At the highest tower of the arena, an obsidian citadel rising like a dark crown, sat the Galactic Council. They watched with mild boredom, draped in silks and breathing in spice vapors from crystalline tubes. High Overseer Kral, a hulking Vonari with bioluminescent tattoos across his face, sneered through his tusks. "Let's see how long this one lasts. A minute? 2. Less," Counselor Vrocht replied, eyes glowing green behind his ocular implants. "I'll wager 10 credits the beast pulps his skull before he can crawl away." Kral grunted with amusement. "You're on." Below, a massive iron door screeched open. A limp figure was thrown into the sand. He hit the ground hard, rolled twice, and didn't move. The silence was brief, then a surge of mocking laughter erupted. It was a man. Human. Bare-chested, ribs visible, arms bruised and blooded. A shock collar burned red around his neck, and his wrists were bound by plasma cuffs. His eyes were closed. He looked barely alive. But then, he moved. Not a twitch of fear. Not a gasp for air. Just a slow, calculated rise to his knees. He pushed himself to his feet, without staggering. And then he looked up. Cold. Focused. Predator eyes. The crowd hushed. Something about that look didn't sit right. "He's going to die," one shouted. "But he's not afraid." The human looked around the arena. He studied the high walls, the gates, the sand beneath him. Every breath was slow, controlled. Like he wasn't looking for an escape, but measuring something. Camera zoom, identification marks, neck, dog tag detected. The camera tried to scan it, but grime and old blood obscured the writing. "Enhance image," Vrocht ordered, annoyed. Why would a slave wear a military tag? Enhancement failed, code unscrambled. Hayes, J, 75th Rangers, twink. A pause. Then laughter. Twink. Kral guffawed so hard his drink spilled. "Is that a name? A joke? What kind of death worlder puts that on a military tag?" They were still laughing when the opposite gate opened. A behemoth stepped out, 9 feet tall, muscle-bound, with obsidian skin reinforced by thick metallic plates. Its tusks curved outward like daggers, and its hands clutched twin shock maces glowing with plasma energy. It had wiped out 12 opponents in its last appearance, including a Voran Rex, who was considered unstoppable. The screens flashed again. Gladiator name, Skog the Maimer. Record, 47 wins, 0 losses. Execution time average, 45 seconds. The crowd went feral. Cheers. Weapons fired into the sky. Gladiator cultists painted their faces with blood in the upper tiers, screaming Skog's name in rhythmic chants. But the human didn't flinch. Not a twitch. Skog pointed a mace toward him and roared, spit flying. Hayes didn't blink. And then the horn sounded. Skog charged. The impact was a thunderous quake as the behemoth's feet slammed into the sand, each step faster than expected for something his size. The twin maces sparked blue with kinetic fury. Still, Hayes didn't move. At the last second, he vanished. Not really, just faster than any viewer expected. He slid under Skog's legs, twisted mid-roll, and slammed his bound wrists against the back of Skog's knee. The beast stumbled. Gasps rippled through the arena. Hayes didn't wait. He launched himself up Skog's back like a jungle cat, wrapped his plasma-bound wrists around the beast's throat, and yanked. Skog thrashed violently, smashing himself against the wall to crush the human, but Hayes adjusted his grip, shifted his weight, and slammed his forehead into the back of Skog's skull. Once. Twice. Crack. Skog's eyes rolled back. Hayes kicked off his back, spun, and landed barefoot in the sand. The beast turned slowly, disoriented. Hayes crouched low. The maces came swinging. One just missed his head. The second, he caught the shaft. With both hands. The crowd froze. The gladiator looked confused, until Hayes twisted with his entire body, wrenching the weapon out of Skog's grip. A human, starved, weak, cuffed, ripped the mace from a killing machine's hands. Skog roared and lunged again. Hayes ducked, spun, and slammed the mace into the beast's throat. A sizzling explosion of plasma burst through Skog's neck. The creature stumbled, gurgled, and fell with a sound like a collapsing building. Dust. Silence. Blood in the air. The camera focused on the human, standing over a corpse twice his size. Not panting. Not smiling. Just still. The plasma cuff sparked, and fell off, shorted by Skog's impact with the wall. Hayes knelt. He retrieved the second mace, scanned the arena slowly, and then turned his gaze directly up at the council tower. At the camera. At them. Twink dog tag identified again. Full record found. Jackson Hayes, Earthborn, U.S. 75th Ranger Regiment. Specialization, covert elimination, sabotage, urban infiltration. Status, KIA, Xenon 5 raid, body not recovered. Vrock's eyes widened. He's supposed to be dead. Not just dead, Kral said slowly. He's the one they called Ghostblade. Another voice chimed in through private channel comms. A deep, slow voice. Former intelligence officer for the Galactic Security Bureau. You've made a mistake. That tag isn't a joke. That man's codename is Twink, because he was always underestimated. Always overlooked. He's not weak, the voice added. He's designed to look weak. And by the time you realize you're wrong, it's already too late. The crowd broke into cheers. But they didn't cheer for the gladiator. They cheered for the human. Hayes stood tall, weapon in each hand, and looked up at the crowd with the icy calm of a soldier who'd seen worse than this and didn't give a damn what they thought. Then he turned, walked to the wall, and sat down. Not exhausted. Not afraid. Waiting. Planning. Like a man who wasn't just trying to survive, but preparing for something much bigger. The beast's corpse was still warm when the next gate screeched open. Jack Hayes, Twink to those who'd served with him, barely turned his head. He knew the arena game too well. One match wasn't enough. One win. That just whetted the council's appetite for blood. Another monster was coming. But this time, he was ready. He stood slowly, holding the two plasma maces in a revice grip. The one he used to crush Skog's throat sparked weakly. A warning pulse flickered across its emitter, overcharged. One more heavy strike and it had short. The other was clean. Hayes didn't care. These weren't weapons to him. They were tools. Improvised. Temporary. Just like the arena. The second gate groaned wide. From the shadows emerged something colder. Sleeker. A machine. No, a cyborg. Its body was humanoid in shape, but coated in reflective black armor. Hexagonal nanoplating shimmered under the arena lights. Its arms were too long. Its head too small. Glowing red eyes flared like torches inside a skull of chrome. Gladiator name, Unit 7X the Stripper. Type, Cyber Assassin Prototype. Kill count, 91. Deaths, 0. Primary weapon, Nano Whip or Adaptive Blade. Combat style, Tactical Dissection. 7X, Vrock muttered, sitting forward. That unit was recalled after it killed a diplomat during a demonstration. Accidentally, Kral added, grinning. Stripped flesh right off the bone. Clean. He looked down at Hayes. This should be fun. The crowd leaned forward in unison, sensing the tension shift. Hayes had taken down a brute. Raw power. But this was precision death. This was a machine that saw every angle, every movement, every weak joint. The warning horn didn't even sound. The unit moved. Faster than a blink. Hayes turned his head just in time to duck the first strike. A thin whip, superheated and flexible, sliced through the air like a laser scythe, missing his temple by an inch. Crack, SSS. It carved into the arena wall, melting sand and stone with a hiss. Hayes rolled, flipped to his feet, and threw one mace. The unit sidestepped it. Too easy. But that wasn't the real attack. Hayes was already airborne, grabbing the mace mid-air after it passed the butt, and twisting to slam it into the back of its head. The machine staggered, once, but compensated instantly. It launched a blade from its forearm. Hayes barely deflected it with the remaining mace, but sparks flew, and the weapon shattered. The crowd roared. Above, Crow cursed. He's adapting too fast. He shouldn't be alive, Vrock hissed. This isn't how humans fight. He's not thinking like prey. They watched as Hayes fell back, sliding in the sand, arms bleeding, breathing hard, but eyes focused. His hand brushed the collar on his neck. Still live. Still shocking. He looked up at the tower again, and smiled. Not for show, but because something was coming, and it wasn't from the gate. Meanwhile, above, Counselor Ressa tapped into the secure feed. Her 4 spider-like limbs clicked rapidly across the control panel, accessing every bit of data on Hayes. Old combat logs, Black Ops files, psychological reports. Nothing made sense. This man, Twink, was presumed dead on Xenon 5 during a sabotage raid. He'd infiltrated a Zalza fortress, planted a neutron bomb, and disappeared in the blast radius. There should have been nothing left. Where did we get him? She demanded into the comms. A gruff voice responded. He was picked up 3 months ago on a slaver barge near the Draco Rift. No ID. No records. We tossed him in with the prisoners, figured he'd break within a week. Why wasn't he executed? Asked for the arena. What? Didn't beg. Didn't cry. Just looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Put me in the arena. I want to see what bleeds." Her limbs froze. She tapped into the arena control feed. What she saw chilled her. Hayes had his hands up, circling. His foot nudged something in the sand. The second shock mace. He hadn't discarded it randomly. He'd planned the entire sequence of combat, used the first mace to draw attention, the second as a hidden trap. As 7X lunged again, Hayes rolled low, swept the mace up with a kick, caught it mid-spin, and drove it straight through the assassin's core processor. Thuum, crack. The machine let out a high-pitched wail. It sparked violently, staggered, twitched, and dropped. Dead. Hayes had killed it with a single, flawless, perfectly timed counter. Silence. Then cheering. Then shouting. From the council. From the guards. From the spectators. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was threat level red. Back in the pit. Hayes yanked the blade from the unit's wrist and started stripping its armor. Not to wear it. To repurpose it. A guard watching from the control deck raised a brow. What the hell's he doing? Engineering, someone muttered. He's making something. The plasma edge of the blade was fused with nanosteel plates and shaped into a crude buckler. The remaining whip was rewired, turned into a wrist hook with a grappling function. Primitive, but deadly. Then Hayes did something strange. He walked to the edge of the arena and carved something into the wall using the blade. It took 30 seconds. When he stepped away, the arena camera zoomed in. For simple words, etched deep in jagged, deliberate lines. You broke the rules. The council stared. What does it mean? Kral asked. Vrock looked ill. His not playing. His not surviving. His executing. Elsewhere, deep inside the bowels of the arena complex. Cell Block 9. Prisoner quarters. The lights flickered. Guards screamed. Explosions rocked the floor as one of the lower security doors blew open. From the inside, out rushed dozens of humans. Starved, beaten, broken looking. But they moved with training. Coordinated. Ex-military. Former Earth Special Forces. Each one had a name. A call sign. A mission. And they all had the same whispered orders. Wait for the Ghost Blade signal. That signal? It had just been carved into the arena wall. Up top, in the council's war room. Shut it down. Ressa screamed. Lock the gates. Kill the feeds. Terminate the human. Too late. Hayes lifted his head. Blood stained his arms, and his eyes were like frost-covered steel. The holograms in the arena all went dead. In their place appeared a static-filled, encrypted symbol. A wolf skull. Below it, 2 words. Earth watching. The council members began shouting over each other. That's an Oath Black Ops unit. They are supposed to be disbanded. No, they went dark, Ghost Division. What the hell is he planning? Hayes looked straight into the closest camera. Spoke 3 words. Calm. Clear. Cold-blooded. I'm not alone. Back in the blood-soaked pit, more doors began to open. Hayes didn't flinch. He'd set this entire sequence into motion the day they threw him into a cell. He hadn't just waited. He'd planned. He'd whispered. He'd found other captured Earth soldiers, spies, saboteurs, pilots, hackers. He'd given them hope, a direction, a reason. And now? The arena wasn't a prison. It was a trap. But not for him. For them. The Galactic Council had made a fatal mistake. They thought they'd tossed a human into the pit to die like an animal. But Hayes wasn't just a human. He was a ranger. A weapon. And now? He was done waiting. The crowd didn't notice at first. Amid the riotous cheering, blood-splattered glass, and bone-rattling growls of the newly released gladiator beast, the cameras tried to focus on the mangled body in the center of the arena. But the human was still moving. Barely. Charred skin hung from his ribs like scorched leather. His left arm twisted at a sickening angle. His lips were cracked, eyes swollen. And yet, he was smiling. Just a thin, crooked smile. Like a man who'd just heard a joke no one else got. The announcer, a blue-scaled Pyraxian named Vroltz, laughed nervously into the mic, and there you have it, fine citizens of the Galactic Core, Earth's last broken specimen, reduced to ash. The crowd roared. Then something dropped from the human's neck. Something small. Metallic. It bounced once on the date. Then twice. Then landed face up on the scorched ground. The camera drone zoomed in. The crowd fell dead silent. A single piece of Earth-crafted metal. Dog tag. The tag was scratched. Burnt. Scorched by years of exposure. But the etching was still visible. Hayes, J.M. Ghost Division, Earth Ops. Do not recover body. In the Galactic War archives, that name wasn't just a relic. It was a nightmare. The Ghost Division was a rumor, Earth's response to alien expansion during the early Outer Rim conflicts. A Black Ops unit made of soldiers too brutal for standard command, too effective to retire. They didn't operate under rules. They operated under one mission. You touch Earth, we touch your throat. And Jack M. Hayes? He wasn't just a soldier. He was their spy. Inside the Council's elite viewing chamber, the mood shifted like a storm cloud cracking overhead. Governor Vrocht leaned forward, 3 eyes wide with disbelief. Is this real? He snapped. Someone confirm this isn't fabricated. Ressa, the pale-skinned strategist who'd once recommended executing Hayes quietly, stared down at the dog tag on the screen. I told you not to throw him into the arena. Vrocht waved a claw dismissively. He's already dead. Look at him, he's broken. But Ressa wasn't watching Hayes. She was watching the others. The humans chained in the upper holding cells. The ones who had been beaten into silence, humiliated in the gladiator pits for years. They had seen the tag too. And they were standing. In cell block 9, a grizzled man with a white beard and missing eye stood up for the first time in 6 months. His name was Rex Crawler Daly. He slammed his fist against the reinforced glass and whispered something in English. Ghost lives. Then he turned to the wall behind his cot. Hidden behind cracked concrete and rusted bolts was a small compartment the guards had never found. Inside, a strip of nano-threaded detonator wire. And a photo. Hayes, Whisper, Pinch, Crawler. The last known members of Ghost Division. The arena guards began to panic. One tried to rush into the pit to retrieve the dog tag. Maybe finish Hayes off properly this time. Bad move. Hayes snapped to his feet like a viper. His broken arm wasn't broken anymore. It never was. The twist was a dislocation. A misdirect. He jammed the arm into place with a brutal pop and grabbed the guard's plasma blade from his belt. The crowd gasped. Hayes slashed once. The guard's body collapsed in 2 parts. Then, Hayes lifted the dog tag from the dirt, held it up to the camera drone, now hovering uncertainly just above him, and smiled wider. Hi, Mom, he whispered into the mic. The camera drone exploded. On command. Back in cell block 9, Crawler pressed a single button on a device hidden beneath his bunk. All across the prison, the Ghost Division's contingency plan activated. They had prepared for this. Every stolen part. Every piece of smuggled tech. Every month of calculated silence. Crawler hadn't just waited. He'd been building. In the council command center, lights flickered. Doors locked. Turrets spun 180 degrees. Then the screens went dark. Ressa cursed in 7 languages. They are hijacking the grid. Vrock turned to her, panic in his voice. Who's they? It's one human. Ressa hissed, it's Ghost Division. And we didn't capture a prisoner. We captured their commander. In cell block 3, a slim woman with a shattered jaw pried open a wall panel using a sharpened pipe. Inside was a pulse drive control module, rigged with stolen council power cores. Whisper had been silent for months. Now she screamed. Prison-wide, chaos erupted. Guard towers exploded. Magnetic cell doors slammed open. From behind every sealed cell emerged more than prisoners. Soldiers. Ghost Division hadn't died. They had simply waited. In the arena, Hayes didn't run. He stood at the center, surrounded by fire, blood, and the now roaring crowd. But they weren't cheering anymore. They were screaming, trying to escape. Because the arena's shields had been reversed. No one was getting out. But something else was getting in. From the far end of the pit, massive bay doors opened with a mechanical groan. A long-forgotten council experiment was wheeled into view, a 20-foot war beast named Project Titan, armored in reactive scales, fed on human remains for sport. It had never been released because the council feared it would kill everyone. Now, they tossed it in like a final insult. The crowd watched, paralyzed with horror, as the monster charged toward Hayes. He didn't flinch. Instead, he reached down, gripped the severed plasma blade from the guard's corpse, and set his stance. The beast lunged. Hayes moved like lightning. He ducked under its first swipe, rolled, and slashed across its underbelly. Sparks flew. Blood sprayed. The creature roared and stomped, trying to crush him. But Hayes was already behind it. And now he had climbed its back. With one hand, he drove the blade into a weak joint in the spine. With the other, he shoved the dog tag into the wound. The tag was more than just metal. It was a detonated trigger. Ressa's scream was the last thing Vrock heard before the feed cut out. The entire arena erupted into white fire. Half the upper tower collapsed. The shield dome shattered like glass. And when the smoke cleared, only one figure stood in the firelight. Limbs bloody, burned, holding a plasma blade in one hand, and the dog tag in the other. Flames lit the walls of the arena as the surviving audience clawed at exits that no longer responded. The screams weren't part of the entertainment anymore. They were real. Smoke, fire, and the scent of scorched flesh turned the arena into a tomb, and at its center stood the last man anyone expected to survive. Jack Hayes. Blood dripping down his face, dog tag clenched in a scorched fist, plasma blade still humming in the other. Above him, cell blocks cracked open like rotten eggs. The humans didn't run. They descended. Crawler was the first to hit the ground. Grizzled, armored in scrap, holding a jury-rigged pulse cannon he'd built from maintenance pipes and old shield regulators. Whisper dropped next, both arms wrapped in reinforced chains, moving with a predator's grace. Behind them came the rest of the Ghost Division, those who'd been beaten, buried, tortured, and left to rot for years. Now they were home. One of the prisoners looked around, eyes wide. This place, it's a tomb. Hayes nodded. Then let's bury the architects. The uprising spread like fire across the prison sectors. Tower by tower, Ghost agents activated hidden failsafes. Hacked doors. Shut off oxygen to alien-only barracks. Disabled mech suits and overrode turrets. What the Galactic Council didn't realize was that this wasn't an escape attempt. This was an execution. Cell Block 4B held a notorious council interrogator named Relvex, infamous for torturing human prisoners with neural flaying. Hayes found him huddled behind his energy desk, begging for mercy in 6 languages. "Didn't you say humans screamed the prettiest?" Hayes asked coldly. Then he shoved the man into his own memory-wiped chair and turned it to max. The screams were loud, but not pretty. Back in the control chamber, Council Governor Vrock was losing his mind. Seal it off. Seal everything. Ressa, covered in ash and blood from a collapsed ceiling beam, stared at him like he was already dead. "You don't get it, do you?" she rasped. "This isn't an uprising. It's retribution." The floor beneath them shook as Sector Delta 12 exploded. Vrock grabbed the MIC, shouting into the prison's emergency channel. All security units, converge on the arena. Terminate the humans immediately. Use lethal force. They answered. Over a dozen council death mechs stomped into the arena, towering machines equipped with plasma cannons, gravity blasters, and armor that had shredded through warfronts. Their targeting systems locked onto Hayes and the other rebels instantly. Crawler spat. Well, that's not fair. Hayes cracked his neck. Wouldn't be a challenge otherwise. He whistled. 2 sharp notes. In the upper rafters, something howled. A beast leapt from the shadows, massive, all muscle and rage. It landed on the back of the lead death mech and tore through its cockpit like foil. Steel screamed. Sparks rained down. It was Juno, Hayes' genetically enhanced warhound, taken from him during capture and held in stasis deep beneath the prison. Until now, she was bigger, meaner, and very, very angry. The death mechs opened fire. The arena erupted into chaos again. Hayes and Crawler moved like shadows, dodging, slashing, planting explosives where joints met armor. Whisper danced through bullets, wrapping chains around a mecha's leg and yanking until it crashed sideways like a falling god. Juno ripped the head off another. Hayes sprinted through the fire, launched onto a mecha's shoulder, and drove the plasma blade straight through its reactor core. Boom! Metal and flesh flew in every direction. From the burning arena, the humans emerged victorious. Not just Hayes and his team, but hundreds more. Engineers, medics, scouts, sharpshooters, forgotten soldiers from failed colonies, survivors of experiments, now united by rage, and by a commander with nothing left to lose. The prison wasn't just a cage. It was a launchpad. They didn't escape blindly. They moved with intent. Sector by sector, Ghost units seized control of the power cores, the orbital elevator, the landing bays. In Docking Bay 6, a team of prisoners hijacked a supply freighter, opened its weapon cache, and distributed enough gear to arm an army. Crawler radioed in. Command, we've got assault rifles, pulse launchers, 2 exosuits, and an angry mechanic named Jules. Hayes replied coolly, that's all I need. Council reinforcements arrived. A full battalion. But they were too late. The humans had rewritten the prison's systems, turned turrets on the guards, rerouted oxygen from their ships, cut their comms. A group of alien commandos tried to flank from the east hallway. They stepped on a pressure plate. Whisper's homemade IEDs turned the corridor into a blender of shrapnel and fire. Only a leg remained. By hour 6, the prison's main tower, the Council's operations hub, was the only structure untouched. That changed quickly. Hayes stormed the tower with Crawler and Whisper at his side, plasma rifles in hand, grenades strapped to their chests. The final defenders inside didn't stand a chance. They made it to the command deck. Vrock was there, hiding behind a comms console, trying to send a distress signal. Hayes stepped over 3 bodies, leaned over, and crushed the console with his boot. Distress signals only work when someone cares. Vrock trembled. This is a war crime. You'll be hunted, your planet destroyed. Hayes raised his rifle slowly. Oh, they've tried that. He fired. Ressa stepped out from behind column, hands raised. I warned them. About you. Hayes studied her. You did. She took a cautious step forward. There's more prisons. More humans. I can help you find them. Hayes looked at Crawler. Then back at her. You get one chance. She nodded. Understood. He lowered the rifle. But if you betray me, he said quietly, you die before you finish blinking. With the prison secured, the humans gathered on the arena floor, where it had all begun. Hundreds of freed prisoners stood beneath the broken shield dome, now open to the stars. Whisper climbed to the central podium, flanked by Juno and Crawler. Then Hayes stepped forward. He held up the dog tag. This is not the end, he shouted. This is not the last arena. There are thousands more. Humans rotting in chains across this galaxy. The crowd murmured. Faces lit with rage and hope. We are not prisoners anymore, Hayes growled. We are the reckoning. They raised fists. Weapons. Shouted until the echoes became a war cry. The Galactic Council had tossed a human into the arena. They didn't know he was Ghost Division. Now the galaxy was about to learn. What happens when you corner a wolf and call it weak? They thought it would end in the arena. They thought a caged man couldn't start a war. But war was never about numbers. It was about rage. It was about loss. And above all, it was about revenge. The first prison world fell in 4 hours. Black Site Gavrax 9, buried in asteroid rubble, known for erasing the minds of its captives. Now it was silent. No comms. No survivors. The humans didn't just escape, they vaporized the facility from orbit using its own fusion core. They left one message in the ashes, pulsing in every known language. You made us animals. Now we hunt. From there, it was a wildfire across the stars. Crawler led the strike on Virex Station, disabling its orbital defenses with a virus coded from leftover slave implants. Whisper, in silence and shadow, personally assassinated 5 council scientists involved in human experimentation on Ren 3. Juno, now dubbed the Hellhound of Sol, led an assault on a council war barge, shredding through hardened mercenary troops before tearing through the captain's command chamber. And Hayes? He stood at the center of it all. No longer a ghost. Now a name spoken in fear. The council gathered in emergency session. 600 alien delegates. 12 systems. 4 emperors. Panic echoed through the marble walls of the High Assembly Spire on Galtoreth Prime. Human insurgents have crippled 10 prison complexes. They've hijacked supply fleets. We just lost the Agroforge system. Entire factories destroyed. Councillor Zotarth slammed his clawed hand on the stone desk. They were a primitive species. We conquered their colonies in days. They weren't soldiers, whispered a trembling aide. They were ghosts. Across the stars, Ghost Division's rebellion took shape. They moved through old communication lines the council had long abandoned. Backdoors. Dead frequencies. And everywhere they went, they didn't just liberate humans. They recruited orphans, scientists, field medics, ground assault veterans. Those forgotten, left behind. Ghost Division grew from a whisper into a specter of vengeance. In one brutal strike, Hayes hit Ulex Prime, a major hub where alien elites auctioned off high-value prisoners. They didn't just attack, they broadcasted live. One camera, one feed. Across 6 galaxies, beings watched in horror as the human warship Valkyries rough tore through planetary defenses like paper. Then Hayes walked into the auction hall. Smoke trailing behind him. Rifle in one hand. Dog tag swinging around his neck like a war banner. He looked at the camera. And he said, "You sold our people. You broke our bones. You made us bleed for sport. Now it's your turn." He raised his rifle. The screen cut to black. The council issued bounties. Hired mercenary armies. Offered entire planets for Hayes' head. Didn't matter. Every time they came close, their teams vanished. Ships turned to husks. Captains strung up on their own hulls. One message always scrawled in blood or fire. We remember the arena. But it wasn't just about revenge. Hayes had a mission. There was still one prison he hadn't touched. Arquetta 0. The original black site. Where humans were first dissected, brain-mapped, reprogrammed. The place where Ghost Division's earliest operatives were broken or killed. Hayes called it the graveyard. And he intended to burn it to the ground. The battle for Arquetta was brutal. The Council had fortified it with orbital guns, planetary shields, and over 30,000 trained troops. Didn't matter. Ghost Division didn't play fair. They didn't charge the front. They infiltrated beneath the crust, through maintenance shafts and sort channels built decades ago by enslaved humans. They detonated charges from below, cracking the fortress like a rotten egg. Hayes personally led the breach into the neural facility, where they'd once tried to wipe his mind. He found the head scientist, Dr. Hal von Zay, cowering, whimpering, holding a data drive like a shield. "Please. We learned so much. Think what we can become, together." Hayes took the drive, snapped it. "Some knowledge," he growled, "was never yours to take." Then he left him for Whisper. The scientist didn't scream for long. By the time Arquetta burned, the stars themselves seemed to tremble. The Council's reign was bleeding. System by system, planet by planet. The ghosts were coming. And at the head of it all, Hayes. His face became legend. His name, a myth. His dog tag, a symbol of defiance. On the ruins of the Council's homeworld, where once nobles feasted and humans died in cages, Hayes stood again in a circle of fire. Around him, freed prisoners, survivors, and those who'd chosen to fight beside him. He took the last functioning council banner, tore it in two, and dropped it into the flames. "We don't kneel," he said. "Not anymore." And so the galaxy changed. Where once the council ruled without mercy, a new force grew in the void. Not an empire, not a republic, but a brotherhood forged in chains, fire, and war. They called themselves the Forgotten Legion. And every time a new rebellion rose, every time a human broke their bonds and picked up a blade, they remembered the story, the arena, the chains, and the man with the dog tag.